Mr. Abhinav Bindra, who is India's first Olympic gold medalist.
He taught me very early on the shortest way to success. And the shortest way to success with hard work. Many, many moments of disappointment, many moments of hardships, many moments of, I can't do this, but you continue to work hard and you continue to put your best foot forward, no matter what the circumstances, no matter how difficult the challenges. One thing was never an option, that was to give up. Firstly, it's a big misconception that shooting is a very mental sport. It is really about finding that coordination. But of course, there is an element when you have to perform under pressure. Having the ability to have acceptance was very, very important, because acceptance also gives birth to adaptability. You need to learn how to adapt and adapt very quickly to changing circumstances in a competition. The only guarantee that you have in sport is that there is absolutely no guarantee for success. More than winning, it was the thrill of performing under the most amount of duress and pressure and being the best that I could be.
Hey there, Sid here. Welcome to this exclusive interview. And I have with me Mr. Abhinav Bindra, who is India's first Olympic gold medalist. And it's truly an honor to have him over here. 2008 Summer Olympics in Beijing, he got the gold, the first Indian to get gold at the 10-meter air rifle event. Over 150 medals in his 22-year career, Padma Bhushan award winner, and one of the top influencers in the sporting community here in India. And what I also, I've been hearing a lot about is the ABFT, the Abhinav Bindra Foundation, which we're going to be talking about later. Truly an honor and privilege, Mr. Abhinav, to have you in this show, which is called Master's Secrets, where we want to dive into what does it take to be a good student and what does it take to be a true master of your craft. So welcome to this interview.
Thank you. Glad to be with you, and a pleasure to be with you on this show.
Thank you. So I want to start off with the first fundamental question is, besides your core area, which is in the sporting domain, I wanted to take you back in time and ask you, who was your first coach, and what were the foundational principles that they set for you, which is what has resulted in the kind of amazing results that you've got. So that's the first question. Who was your first coach, and what were the principles you got?
My first coach was Colonel Dillon. That's how I started my sport. My first official shooting session took place in his backyard, where he had set up a shooting range under a mango tree.
Okay.
That was my first formal shooting lesson that I ever went to. And Colonel Dillon had a huge, huge role to play in my life, because he taught me very early on the shortest way to success. And the shortest way to success, what he taught me, was hard work. That's what he really pushed from day one. He ensured that I imbibed a very strong work ethic, and absolutely put everything in my heart and soul into my endeavor. And that is something that I started following very early on in my sporting career. And those were values that he imbibed into me by telling me many stories of his life. He was also at some stage in his army life roommates with Milkha Singh, so he would tell stories about him and how hard he worked, and of course he also told me stories of his own life and how hard he worked. And that's how I learned that I needed to work hard and I needed to emulate their work ethic, and maybe try and go beyond what was asked for and called for. And that's what slowly but surely I started to do. But that is the core principle what my first coach made sure that I imbibed.
And what age were you at that time when you were interacting with him?
I started shooting when I was 13 years old.
Okay.
As a 13-year-old boy, I went to his home, and um, in fact, early on, and it is an interesting story, we're talking about hard work. He was reluctant to take me on as a student.
Is it?
And he wasn't giving me time. A family friend had kind of made an introduction, but he was a little bit hesitant. And I wrote him a letter as a 13-year-old boy that I was ready to put all what I could, and I was ready to work hard and hopefully make him proud one day. And that when he received that letter, is when he finally gave me some time, and that is how my relationship with him started.
Wow. So he really wanted to test how serious are you about this, and I think that letter did it. So what was your practice routine like in your initial days? Like, since for hard work was one of the foundational principles, like what were the average day looking like for you when you were 13, 14, 15?
Well, as a 13-year-old boy, I'd wake up in the morning and go to school, come back at 1:30 in the afternoon. I had 20 minutes allotted for lunch.
Okay.
And by 2 p.m., I was in the car to go to his home to train, whether it was in the middle of summer, or whether it was in the peak of winter, or whether it was raining, or whether there was a hailstorm. There was never a day that I did not show up. And then from about 2:15 to 20 to 5:30 in the evening, it was what I trained in his home. I trained to shoot as a 13-year-old boy. Came back home by 6 p.m. Of course, I had to finish homework from school and this, that, and the other. 7 p.m. was dinner, and 8 o'clock I was in bed. That was
Wow.
life. That was life as a 13-year-old. But of course, that routine evolved over a period of time. And a typical day in my shooting career meant, or a typical week in my shooting career meant that I trained for about 40 hours a week.
This is besides school and everything else. This is your
I
core.
mean, when I really just started focusing on my sport is just when I had to commit 40 hours a week, which was 8 hours a day, and which included shooting, which included physical exercise, which included rehab work, which included recovery work, which included mental training. So it was a full day, which started at 6 in the morning and ended at 8 or 9 in the evening. And even the dreams that I had while I was asleep revolved around my sport. So you could say that it was a 24/7 endeavor.
Wow. Did you ever feel at that point like this is too much, or did you feel like giving up, or was it, or did you really love the craft right from a young age? Like, what was going through your mind? Was it your parents telling you go and do this more, or the colonel telling you, or was it self-induced inspiration? What was it like?
I think those emotions that you talked about, one goes through at some point of time in life. At all times, there were times of life when I had tremendous amount of failure and hardship and challenges, and I wanted to give up. Then there were these emotions are very natural to face. But
Yes.
of course, that motivation, firstly, what you talked about, was very intrinsic in nature. I was self-motivated, and there didn't need to be told that I needed to work hard and I needed to put my best foot forward. My parents never ever pushed me into anything.
Okay.
They were there to support me materially, emotionally. When I felt hopeless, they continued to see tremendous amount of hope in me. One of their greatest contributions they made was gave me space to make my own decisions. They gave me space to make my own mistakes. And that was extremely important in my growth. Because when you're at the firing line in an Olympic final, you're going to be all alone. And
Yes.
you have to find that courage from deep within yourself to be able to take that leap of faith and do what is needed. That was a great contribution that my parents made, was that they let me be, allowed me to own my failures and allowed me to own my successes. But of course, in the long career, which spanned 20 odd years, which was laced with most amount of it was about dealing with failure, because an athlete's
Yes.
life is predominantly failure in sport, and that was also difficult. It was challenging, but I was also very persistent. I learned that to succeed, you needed to learn how to fail well. It was about learning to let go of the unwanted baggage that failure brought along, but it was also about the need to learn from these
Yeah.
experiences, and that's what exactly my journey really became, was to learn from every experience and try to be better than what I was yesterday. uh,
Yes.
and that is what I did. Of course, there were many, many moments of disappointment, many moments of hardships, many moments of I can't do this, but um, you continue to work hard and you continue to put your best foot forward, no matter what the circumstances, no matter how difficult the challenges. One thing was never an option, that was to give up. So there was
Yes.
that was never an option. So it was all about, it was really about a journey of self-respect more than anything else. It was about, and how do you gain your self-respect is by doing everything humanly possible uh,
Yes.
to be the best that you can be. And if you can look yourself into the mirror and ask yourself that have you done everything that you could, then you're a winner. You're a winner
Yes.
in your own eyes, despite whatever the outcome may be.
Yeah.
And if you are able to attain your own self-respect, you will always have your pride. That I believe in every journey is the most important part.
Amazing, amazing. So it looks like the coach has given you the foundation. Your parents have given you the support, and like typical Indian parents, if you see, they've been mostly focusing on academics and stuff. So did you have any kind of pressure like that? Like, okay, you got to score the marks in the exam and the boards, and you got this also going. So was there any pressure like that on you personally?
Education was important, and rightly so. And I did complete my education, and I credit my mom for pushing me towards that. And
Nice.
but I think it was an important aspect, and I think that only helped me in sport. My greatest years in my sports career were when I was a student athlete. Is And the reason why I say that was a time in my sports career where I had a degree of balance in life. Uh,
Nice.
I only had an X amount of hours to focus on my sport. I did X amount of hours where I needed to do other things, and that created a sort of mental balance, uh, which I think in any pursuit of excellence very important. And in any pursuit of excellence, this balance, what we talk about, is often lost. And I certainly did lose it at some point in my career. But those days as a student athlete were were most definitely challenging, but also effective. Uh,
Yes.
so
So could you say that at that time you had a very strong regimen in terms of your routine, your day? It was clockwork, not doing too many things, but very focused. Was that how the lifestyle was?
Well, that's what it was about, and it really revolved around my sport, and it really revolved around how I could get better at it. And yes, it's extremely regimented. Routine was a big part of everything that I did, and routine continues to be a very important part of my present day life. That is something that is now imbibed into me, and
Yes.
on days when there is no routine, and then I'm out of balance and I'm out of sync.
Lost.
That continues to stay in my life even to date. But you're right, it was a very regimented life.
Amazing. The next question I have is to do with this particular sport. Unlike others where there's a lot of dynamics here, looks like shooting is more like it requires you to be a lot in your head, thinking. And so I want to find out like what goes on in your head, during such intense and in the nature of this kind of sport. Like what usually goes on in the head?
Firstly, it's a big misconception that shooting is a very mental sport. Every sport has a degree of physicality. Every sport has a degree of mental aptitude needed. shooting, my particular event, is a sport which requires you to stand absolutely still. And standing absolutely still is one of the most physically demanding activities that the human body can endure. Primarily, the human body is not built to stand still. The human
Yes.
body is built to move. And what we are trying to do is completely the opposite. So it requires a great amount of balance. It requires a great amount of stability. It requires a different kind of fitness. It might not require brute strength, but it requires quality of movement. It requires efficiency and precision in movement. And that requires you to, of course, have the skills of balance and coordination, and really finding that synchronization between mind and body. But there's also an element of cardiovascular fitness which comes into play in shooting. As I talked about, it requires some sport of calmness and stillness and all this and the other. But that is in an ideal world scenario. When you're in competition and when you have a sudden burst of adrenaline and you have no where to use that adrenaline, and you're trying to stand still. Your heart will suddenly start pumping at 180 beats per minute, and you're supposed to stand absolutely still and find that stillness of mind and body, which is hugely challenging. So if you're cardiovascularly very, very well trained, then probably when this adrenaline does hit you, the heart rate won't go to 180, but it might go to 150. And that could be a big advantage in performance. So it also means that you have to train a lot cardiovascularly, and that's precisely what I did. Train for all these different elements of the sport. Of course, there is a big mental element as well, but I would say that it is about finding this balance and this harmony between mind and body. If the mind is, if the body doesn't work, the mind doesn't work, and vice versa.
Yes.
So it is really about finding that coordination. But of course, there is an element when you have to perform under pressure. And that is where the body also comes into play, because at some point or the other, the mind gives up, or the mind has a weak moment, which is human and natural, and that's where the body needs to pull you and drag you through those difficult moments, and the body has to be so well trained and on an autopilot that it automatically does what it does need to do. Of course, performing under pressure requires you to have courage. It requires you to let go. It requires you to take a huge leap of faith. There is absolutely no way. At least I didn't learn any way, or I couldn't find any way, and I went to great lengths in this discovery, is to find a way to not have pressure. You have to just find a way to coexist with pressure. The pressure is always going to be there. So it is about learning to coexist. It is really about learning to accept pressure, and it is really it's a journey of learning how to work with this feeling, with this pressure, and try and be the best that you can be in those circumstances. So,
amazing. So a lot of practice. So did any other processes help you, like meditation or spirituality? Like, did any of those elements were they a part of your regimen of going through the learning?
No, a sport of shooting is very meditative in nature naturally.
Yeah.
So it was not about, of course, I did a lot of things scientifically. I did a lot of biofeedback training. I did a lot of feedback training, which means I was scanning 32 areas of my brain, and we had a particular type of brain activity, and we tried to create to get into that state of mind. So there was a lot of scientific work also done on a mental front, on a physiological front. A lot of breathing exercises. I used to work, very interestingly, that I used to work with a deep sea diver, learn how to work with breathing techniques, because deep sea diving is very dangerous. And, they go without oxygen support, and they have to find a way to have effective breathing techniques to survive. So it's interesting that I used that creativity and used that openness. I had that openness in mindset to learn from others, to learn from people outside my field. And that was a very useful exercise.
Fantastic, fantastic. Next question is the moment of truth. All those years of preparation. 2008 Beijing Olympic gold. What was that feeling like when you? I went and saw the YouTube video once again just now before this call. Like, what was that feeling like when you knew that you got the gold and the first ever individual gold for India? Walk us through those emotions.
Firstly, I was very detached from outcomes going into Beijing. That was another very important element of what I did. And yes, of course, I knew I'd won a gold medal. But for me, the most important goal of that day was to be the best that I could be on every single competition shot. So there, of course, the more than winning, it was the thrill of performing under the most amount of duress and pressure and being the best that I could be. Then, of course, there was the greatest emotion that I felt was that of relief, that, so much effort had gone into this endeavor, so many years of training, so much hard work, so many resources put into play. And I was just very relieved that I was fortunate enough to get the outcome that I strived for. Sport is very unique. It can never be broken down into black and white.
Yes.
And the only guarantee that you have in sport is that there is absolutely no guarantee for success. So you can put in a lot of effort and get no results out of it. But of course, I was fortunate that my hard work did pay me that dividend that I was looking for.
Yes.
So relief was again a very big thing. Of course, there was a huge amount of pride and thrill and all of those kind of things. But relief is probably the most apparent emotion.
Wow. Such a, when I looked at that video again, I just felt that it was such a proud moment for our country. And, ever since, like, you set the benchmark, and then now we're looking forward to more and more such golds, getting them for our country. Question is, how do you mentally prepare before getting into a global championship? Like, any rituals that you've been following?
No particular rituals, but I think I talked about detachment from outcomes.
Yeah.
Very important.
Yes.
Just, I think, acceptance of whatever challenge that would come. Because, there will be some unforeseen challenge that will come your way. In a competition, you may have trained for every possibility, but something or the other will happen. Having the ability to have acceptance was very, very important, because acceptance also gives birth to adaptability. Because you need to learn how to adapt very quickly to changing circumstances in a competition. So that openness and flexibility in mindset was a very important part, and that is something that has to become a way of life. It is not that you just train for it as a ritual 2 days before competition. It has to be something that you imbibe at a much, much deeper level. And it has to really become a way of life. There was also another element of practicing gratitude. That was also an important element, because gratitude gives openness. It opens your heart up a little bit, and it is again an effective way to be able to compete under stress. And I think another important thing was just being mindful. And again, it's not that you suddenly start becoming mindful 2 days before competition. Mindful as a way of life, whether you're eating lunch, whether I'm speaking to you today on this interview, I have to be 100% present and having that ability to have that degree of mindfulness in whatever activity that you are undertaking, that you really, really live in the present moment. And when you start to do that as a way of life, I think that is where you internalize these important habits and internalize these important aspects much more. And then you don't need to do anything special before competition, because what we all try to do is let's find something special, a special routine before competition. And we are just looking for magic, which doesn't exist.
Yeah. So it's the way of the being, even before, and that's a lifestyle. Very powerful. And I like the aspect of being detached and also being adaptable. It's amazing how you've beautifully shared those points. Amazing. Uh, my next question is like, who were your big inspirations? Like, can you name a few, maybe your top 3 sports personalities, or any, even if they are not from the sports fraternity, who inspired you to really push your boundaries to the next level?
No, I don't think I had inspiration from sport, to be very honest. My biggest people who inspired me were my parents. And they continue to inspire me because they have
Nice.
an immense amount of work ethic. They work very, very hard. They are very positive people. I am not positive in nature. I'm more realistic in nature. I see things as they are. They are very positive. They see the glass half full. But more than anything, it is their work ethic and their ability to not give up, and to stay strong under every challenge and every circumstance, which they have displayed and continue to display through all of life's challenges, which have inspired me in the past and continue to inspire me.
Nice, nice. Thank you for sharing about that. Yeah. So more than 150 medals, 22-year plus career, Padma Bhushan Award. Oh, what an incredible achievement! I just want to know what's going on now in the mind of Abhinav Bindra. Like, now you've achieved so much. So what's next? What are you thinking? What's your vision?
Well, I'm just like any other athlete. My life is also unique, and I have almost 2 lives. One life is over, and I'm just about starting life all over again. One life, which was that of an active athlete, that got over a few years ago, and life changed, and life started all over again. And I like my sports career. I'm building a new life, brick by brick, step by step, starting out at the absolute bottom step and trying to climb the ladder. Of course, I'm trying to set up certain businesses. That takes away quite a lot of time. I'm into the area of healthcare and transitional care and rehabilitation. Those are areas of healthcare which are not yet developed in India, and I hope to continue to work towards that development. Then, of course, my primary outreach to sport in India is through my foundation, something I dedicate 50% of my time to, because
Nice.
I achieved so much in life through sport, and I feel it is my moral obligation to be able to give back to society. And the foundation has 3 pillars of what we do: intervention, education, and using the power of sport for social good. Intervention, we have about 70 odd athletes under our scholarship program called STEAM: science, technology,
Nice.
engineering, analytics, and medicine. And we incorporate all those elements into their training. We have a project specifically for women athletes to empower them. And we have a program where we offer 100 free surgeries to athletes if they require surgeries during
Okay.
the second element is education. It's not just about empowering athletes, but it's about empowering the ecosystem that surrounds the athlete. There we have a sports medicine and research institute. We're giving out bachelor's and master's degrees in sports science and physiotherapy to start with. Second aspect of education is a program we run with our partners, the Elms Foundation and the University of Loughborough. It's for governance, where we have set up a program to empower our sports administrators, an important element for our development. The third element of education is athlete mental health, something I'm committed to on a personal level. And we're trying to build psychologically safe environments in India for athletes to compete and participate in sport. The last pillar is using the power of sport for social good. Our first project is an international project where we've supported 3 refugees to become athletes.
Nice.
I'm proud to say that 2 of these refugees became Olympians, competed in Tokyo. This was a project which we ran with a former rival, now a very good friend, Niccolo Campriani from Italy. The project ran in Lausanne in Switzerland because that is where he was based at that point of time. The second project now, what we're doing is you're trying to really work to bring the Olympic value education program into India. The greatest power of sport is not about winning medals, but what sport can do to society, what the values of sport can do to young people, and how
Yes.
they can positively influence them. Sport teaches you a thing or two about winning, but more importantly, it teaches you how to lose. It teaches you hard work, discipline, integrity, honesty, learning to deal with conflict. It teaches you a lot about self-respect, about respecting rules, about respecting competitors, but also finding your own self-respect.
Yes.
So we are
Yes.
trying to bring the Olympic value education program into India, into certain different education sectors. So that is some degree of advocacy and trying to facilitate that program into India is a part of that work under this pillar.
Fantastic, fantastic. This is truly commendable. I think this is one area which, if is able to bloom in the next few years, it can probably give a new vision for India in athleticism and sports and things like that. And India has predominantly been a
Well,
cricket country and stuff. So I think there are so many other sports, right?
I mean, your channel is for coaches, as you said, in all different
Yes.
fields, and a lot of your coaches may be financial coaches or business coaches, and we're all after economic success in many ways.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting to see that the global superpower economically also happen to be sporting superpowers. I
Yes.
believe that they've become economic superpowers because sport has played a very important role in the foundation and of young people in that country, and contributed towards building character and building that work ethic that I talked about, that honesty,
Yes.
that integrity, that has allowed so many people to become successful in different fields, and also at the end of the day have a very positive role on an economic front. So I think
Yes, yes. That's a very powerful point you mentioned. I mean, a country's economy is driven by the sporting that happens. That's a very interesting, thought and perspective. And I think, how can we help? Like, we have a pretty large community. You mentioned the initiatives that you're working on. So how can my community and any normal average person support this cause? Like, what steps should they take?
I mean, of course, please feel free to connect to us in any way we would like to help or contribute, whether through uh, a donation or whether through your
Yeah.
time or however you feel like participating in supporting us in this journey. Your contributions will be very welcome and extremely valued. So
Yes.
do feel free to connect. We'd be more than delighted to connect and then see how we could find uh, common synergy to work.
Sure, sure. So in my YouTube channel description, I've actually given the link to the website. So if any of you want to connect with this foundation and support this cause, please feel free to do that and connect with the foundation. And the last question that I have is, more on a personal note. Like, what are the other things that interest you besides sports and other things? Like, what keeps you going these days? Yeah.
I love animals. I love dogs. I have three
Nice.
of my own. Um, I like food. I um, love going to and tasting different foods across the world and going to different restaurants and things like that. I love to travel. Um, I like reading a little bit. So a little bit of everything.
Nice, nice. That's great to know. So really want to thank you once again. I think it was a very inspiring, interview. As you know, I have a community of like more than 15,000 trainers, coaches, experts. So, and many of them are building communities. So I tell them, don't just sell your knowledge like courses, and that's the typical game everyone is playing, but build communities and nurture them, and hold people together, hold them accountable. So, are there any tips that you want to share as a parting thought on what does it take to be a good mentor to others, based on your experience?
Well, I think really believing in everybody. I think having that belief if to your student. My parents were big mentors for me, or in my
Yes.
coaches, and this, that, and the other. And they never lost hope in me. Even when I had failure or I had dark days, they always saw light, and they always saw light at the end of the tunnel. Um, I think it's also very important to be good listeners. I think that's a very important role both parties have to play, whether you're learning or whether you're a teacher.
Yeah.
You have to learn to listen to different points of views. And I'll just end by giving the example of one of my coaches who I did not have the best relationship with. He was somebody who was very tough on me, was very critical of me. And I think the only person I hated in my life, and I continue to hate, because he always told me things I did not want to hear and did not want to listen. But what I did was I did find a way to continue to listen to his perspective. And that was something extremely valuable in my life. Maybe 95 things out of 100 I didn't follow, but the 5 that did stick and I did attempt ended up becoming the most valuable lessons I learned. So there's great power in just listening to different perspectives, even if they do not really match your frequency at the start. Hear it out from both sides, and give it a thought. And when you let it settle and when you cool down a little bit, suddenly a different perspective slowly starts to make sense. That is something that at the end of it can be very valuable.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. That was very insightful. So, all of you who are watching on YouTube or wherever else, please share your comments below on what you learned from this. What do you think were your biggest takeaways from this interview? We have more interviews like this coming up with other legends and masters in the space. And Mr. Abhinav, thank you so much once again for your time and for the amazing work that you've been doing. Now you're moving to the second innings. You're going to be really creating more golds in the future. And I really want to wish you all the best on the foundation. And as a community, we're there to help and support in whatever we can, as we are going to be promoting this in other places. So once again, thank you for your time. Thank you for who you are, an amazing person. And thank you for sharing those valuable insights. Really appreciate that.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.